So episode 2 of The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is finally here, and I think it's one of the best episodes of The Walking Dead that we've gotten in years. At least since the main show ended. I think that this episode, with the new setting in France that we got introduced to last week, it's just so refreshing to see the up in production value. It feels cinematic again. It feels fresh, and we even see a little bit of the outbreak in this episode through flashbacks with the character Isabelle, and it's refreshing to see back to the beginning of the apocalypse. We didn't really get to see a lot of it in the main show, and we saw a little bit of it in Fear the Walking Dead, but I love going back to that. So I would like the franchise to delve into that a bit more even, but here it was particularly satisfying to see the character Isabelle, who was very different at that time, and we're getting a hint at how her character arc went. We get an origin story for the character Laurent, and we're on a road mission. We have an escort mission to take Laurent to Paris, which is symbolic of self-discovery in a way. Trips to Paris, from an American perspective, are typically viewed that way. A lot of famous Americans, Benjamin Franklin and others, went to Paris to learn more. I love this end point of a mission, but really that just leads us with a bunch of loosely connected stories along the way. So we have a self-contained story here, a new group of children at a school that we are introduced to, and we get a satisfying beginning, middle, and end with that story. So the self-contained stories along the way are going to be key to making this show work with a mission where we're constantly saying goodbye to characters every episode because we're passing through. So that's definitely something that we'll have to keep track of as the show goes forward. And like I said last week, if the explanation for how Daryl ends up in Paris, or in France rather, just makes no sense, then this whole show will kind of be silly in retrospect, but we can't judge that right now. But based on just this episode, we got some really cool stuff. We got a moat outside of a castle, which is just so cool to see. We've never seen anything like that on Walking Dead. We got a moat of walkers. That was awesome. No variants this week. They focused on the characters, but that's kind of a gimmick at the end of the day, so I like the variants. I'm excited to see running zombies. I like the burner zombies last week, but definitely focusing on the characters was the strong point for this episode. Only real minor criticisms I have for this episode, we'll go through it as I do my breakdown, but there's some points where characters, specifically mostly Daryl, make decisions that I think he's too smart for, that he falls for some traps that I think he would know better, but we'll get through that as we go. But honestly, that doesn't really hurt my enjoyment of the episode overall. I'm really excited to get into this breakdown. Let me know what you guys think of the episode down below, and hit me with the subscribe if you want to see more Walking Dead reviews. So I'm going to be covering all the spin-offs coming up and the rest of this show, of course. So we start off with Isabelle in Paris, and she's at a nightclub. So this is just to give the contrast of who she was before the apocalypse. We know she's had a troubled past. We see her scars on her wrist, which are signs that she's cutting or attempted self-deleting or something like that. But we don't get any explanation for that in this episode. But instead, we see her at the nightclub doing drugs. She's drinking, and also she's schmoozing with a bunch of men. But really, you think it might be just a vice thing, just to hang out with a bunch of different guys and get attention from men. But really, she goes out into the hallway here, and in her purse, there's a bunch of money and stuff that she has stolen from all of these men along the way. So she was definitely somebody who was a sinner, no doubt. And she was stealing. She was not very nun-like. And I think that that's a great transition. The fact that she was kind of purified by the apocalypse is kind of an irony, but it's definitely something I'm excited to delve more into. But what is really good about this flashback scene is not the beginning, because it's a little bit kind of generic party scene. It's very strange to see in The Walking Dead. We don't get a lot of pre-apocalypse flashbacks, for good reason, because it kind of hurts the aesthetic of the show, but we get this full contrast. But really what's exciting is when she goes out of the club and we see zombies biting people. She sees on the subway, there are zombies in there. There's chaos, people trying to break through the windows. I wasn't sure if it was zombies trying to break through the windows or people who weren't zombies. I'm not sure. Maybe there's some variant zombies in the subway, but I just love the production value, and it's just so exciting to see the chaos and all the extras running about. Seeing this car flipped over, seeing just, I love going to the outbreak again, and it's just really refreshing to see on The Walking Dead for sure. So here we got, there's cars driving through zombies, and it turns out that this character here is her boyfriend, I'm assuming. At first, it seems like the way they shot this scene, just a minor criticism, is like, I didn't realize when I was watching this the first time that she knew him. And I'm like, how did he find her? I don't know if they were in contact via cell phone or something, but it just seems odd that he just happened to run into her. The fact that they knew each other already, it kind of seemed random at first. So that it's just very minor criticism for this first scene, but I was so swept up in everything going on that it was fine. So I really like that opening scene. And then we're back with we're looking at the map. Back in the present day, you could say, with Isabelle and Daryl, and they had the path to go to Paris that the priest laid out, and Isabelle wants to take another route because she knows somebody who has a radio, and there's some disagreement about whether or not they should follow the path that was laid out for them. But it turns out it's going to be a good thing, based on the end of the episode, it's going to be a good thing that they're going a slightly different route, but we shall see how that shakes out in the end. So here, Isabelle, I'm still in this scene not realizing that it's the boyfriend and not just a random guy. But she is taken back to her apartment. Her sister is here, and they need to go. There's something going on. There's chaos in the streets. They need to get safe. And Isabelle stops and talks to this neighbor's daughter, and she is scared. Her dad died, and her mom is crying. And Isabelle tells her that she needs to go inside. And this is kind of where we get the first instance of the major theme throughout this episode, which is lies. Lying for the greater good, or lying to protect somebody. There's a lot of that throughout the episode. That's kind of the major theme of this particular episode, where she doesn't tell the child what's going on. She just tells her she needs to stay inside, and that's for the best, right? The kid's not going to understand what's going on. I was kind of thinking that there was going to be an ending with this, that we would see something happen to the kid, that she would get eaten by a zombie or something, but it just seems like it's planted here and then they don't do anything with it. But I remember in the trailer there's a zombie that looks something like her, so I think we're going to get something like that later down the line. But I kind of expected that in this episode, but that's not what happens here. So it's a tragic thing, anytime you bring the kids into it, that's gonna get tragic real quickly. So we're traveling on the road, and they get cut off by a horde of zombies coming in, and then they decide to go on foot, and they're worried about the horse, or the mule rather, and Daryl shoots off a gun in the air so that it runs past the zombies. I'm not exactly sure if that's the thing that would have made the most sense. I mean, they could have just led the mule back the other way and then come back and get their stuff later, right? I mean, they're abandoning their stuff as it is, but they're I think just hoping that the mule will be fine. It's gonna run away. So I don't know. There's something in the back of my mind that's like, could they have handled that better? But it's such a quick thing that happened. Daryl's like prioritizing, we got to keep the people safe. So that makes sense, but. Here's where I really have kind of an issue, is this scene here. Real quickly, they're like, Daryl's like, you got to tell the kid, and then, it's another instance of the lies we tell. They've told Laurent a lot of lies about his origin. We'll get back to that later, but she's not telling him about the Messiah vision that she has. So that's something that is going to be a problem going forward, because one of the other major themes is there's lies that we tell, but the truth ends up coming out anyway. Isabelle says that there's time for the truth later, and really it turns out that, that's not so good, because the kids are going to discover the truth on their own, and then they're going to blame you for that. So that's definitely one of the major themes of this episode. But then we get attacked by this new group. We're walking on the road, and they shoot an arrow at Daryl and the crew here. And that's one thing that kind of bothers me, is on two sides of it, right? So we got the fact that Daryl chases after this guy. It seems like they weren't shooting to kill, they're just like shooting to intimidate and get them to follow, because they're leading Daryl into a trap here is what they're doing. And Daryl falls for it, and I feel like Daryl should know that they're leading him into this narrow passageway they're going to ambush him. I swear he's employed this very tactic at some point in The Walking Dead. I'm sure he has. If he hasn't personally, it's been done to him before. Feels to me like he shouldn't have done that, and it just feels like making Daryl dumber than he really is. That he would fall for this. But I kind of like how intimidating the new group is. We got these weird masks on. They're now kidnapped, and they are being led past these heads on pikes. And of course, you want to have that image projected that you are dangerous if you want to protect the people inside. So that makes sense. That's another lie that you tell the outside world, that we're dangerous, because we find out this group it's full of kids, and it's actually good people inside. And they're wearing the masks to hide the fact that they're children, I imagine, and also just the scarecrow kind of intimidation factor. But that's the other side of it, Daryl falling for a dumb trap. And then there's the other side that I don't know why these kids would go out of their way to just shoot at Daryl and them. I don't know if maybe Daryl and the group were going towards this school here and they needed to lead them away, but it really seems like that was unnecessary. They could have just let them walk by and nothing would have happened. So I don't know why. I get attacking first, but it doesn't seem like that's this group's MO, especially because they seem kind of vulnerable given they're a bunch of kids, So I don't know. It doesn't seem like the best idea, but that's the nitpicks with that scene. And here we got the leader of the group, Lou, I believe is her name, and she's the teacher. She kind of inherited this group from the previous teacher. So it's all kids except for this girl here, and she's kind of interrogating the new people. And, the nuns, they say a prayer to prove that they're a nun. And then Isabelle lies and says that Daryl is a priest. So that's another lie right there. And the truth ends up coming out in the end because Daryl does not know anything about the church and whatnot. So he cannot fake that he's a priest at all. So that's another lie, another instance of the theme. And here we're being led through these classrooms with the kids, and we see the previous teacher hospitalized. And I love the world building here. We see them planting crops outside, and it just feels fleshed out. It feels cinematic. It's a good looking group we got here. So I think that it's pretty cool to see new groups like this. And I also love that Laurent is acting like a kid. I said this in my previous review, that we got to walk this boundary. Like, he's a precocious child, he's a smart kid, but he also needs to act like a kid still. And they do that in this episode. I think they're writing the children pretty well. Some of the acting's a little stiff from the children, but I will cut the young actors a little bit of slack. And thankfully, the script actually writes them like they're children, not like Fear the Walking Dead, where they're saying these flowery, poetic lines that don't at all even sound like what an adult would say. They just sound absolutely fake. These lines, I think, are better. Laurent sits down and he's like, one time I walked backwards for 3 months or something like that. So that I think that was a great line. It's humorous, and also, that's kids say random stuff, just whatever's in their mind. They plop it out, if you know any kids. Laurent sits in this chair, and then this kid next to him says, that's where my brother sits. That's another lie that we find out later in the episode, that the kid was actually, he presumably died. They don't know what happened to him yet, but he's missing. The teacher lies to the brother and says that he's getting help and he's going to be back. Your brother will be back. But really, she knows that he's actually most likely dead. So here, it's a good scene here. And Daryl says a prayer, but it's not a good prayer at all because he is not a priest and he doesn't know how to do that. But basically, Daryl's state of mind is reflected in this scene. His prayer is that, he knows, he feels that God has a reason for turning the world upside down, and that he feels that humanity deserves it in a way. So that's kind of his state of mind and reflection of his view on faith and stuff, and we'll see how that progresses as the season goes. I said last week, most likely the progression here is Daryl needs to regain a little bit of faith in humanity, and that is, I think, going to be the goal of his character, his need that he's going to get fulfilled here. This is where we get the mission for the rest of the episode. We need a new horse. We need to get back on the road. We're not going to be able to move fast enough without a horse. It's going to take too long. Part of me is like, is it a survival thing that they really need a horse, or is it just Daryl wants to get home as quick as possible? They're talking about a castle that has a bunch of equipment, and they got a horse there that they can take, and there's a guy there who's an enemy of the group, and they tried to raid there last time, and Daryl comes up with a lie here that he probably has medicine that can help the older teacher who is dying. Daryl says he doesn't really believe that. He doesn't believe that the lady can be helped at this point, but he uses that just as an excuse to go. So I thought that was a good scene, and that sets up the rest of the episode. Here we're watching Mork and Mindy with the kids, and we've gotten scenes like this in the Commonwealth where it's just like something from the past brought into this new apocalyptic landscape, and it's like a return to normalcy in a way. And it's the kids, they've watched this same episode over and over again. They know all the lines. I'll just say I never thought I'd see Robin Williams in The Walking Dead, so that's pretty cool. And it's a nice scene. I do appreciate that they have the kids on bicycles powering the TV. I'm not sure if that would really be enough to power it, but I'll just give them that one. That's a freebie. They can have that one. So here we got a scene with Isabelle and Daryl. And this scene kind of gives their state of mind. Daryl talks about how he lied about the horse, and Isabelle laments that the children will never know how the world was before. This is a nice scene, and we're starting to build this connection between them. It's kind of an intimate moment with the two of them where they share the truth between them. So it's a nice scene and a good bonding moment. So here we got the flashback. Isabelle's boyfriend wants to leave Isabelle's sister because Isabelle's sister turns out she's pregnant 7 months, and that's a little long for Isabelle not to have noticed that, but maybe she's just so distracted and she's doing drugs and all this stuff. Maybe she just is completely oblivious, but it feels a little bit of a stretch. But you know what? I like the conflict here that the boyfriend's like, we can't deal with this. We need to abandon her at a clinic and then move on to our safe place. Really, he says he's doing it to protect Isabelle, but really he's just trying to protect himself and do the best thing for himself. So that's another lie there. And then Isabelle uses her pickpocketing skills and takes the key and drives off without him. So I love this conflict here. And, again, just going back to the outbreak is awesome. So this is a good scene, and it's a satisfying continuation of that flashback story arc. We didn't just go to Paris for no reason. We had a purpose there. We're seeing the outbreak not just because it's cool. We're seeing the outbreak because we need to learn who Isabelle was before. And I think that it's important. So we got Laurent here playing hide and seek with the children at the preschool, and they tease him a little bit because they don't believe his backstory, which was a lie. His backstory, according to the nuns, was that his mother died and his father was a hero fighting in the war. Turns out we don't even know who the father is. And the father was fighting in the Foreign Legion to kill zombies, was the story he was told. The kids just immediately suss out that sounds made up. That's not real. And Laurent gets teased about living with the nuns. They call the nuns penguins and whatnot. So I think, again, acting stiff, writing good for kids. I think it feels realistic in terms of what they say. Here we have a scene with Sylvie and Isabella, and they're talking about finding a purpose to the world. And it's kind of like, thematic meaning of life stuff. They need more than just to survive. They need a purpose. They need to fit in. They need to fulfill themselves. So it's similar themes to what Walking Dead is always about, but it's kind of in a new way that works for me. I like it. So here, another flashback scene with paramedics we think are going to help, and then it's just a horde of zombies waiting for them. They drive away, and now we're at this castle. Love the imagery of the castle. Okay, and here's where we learn about the lie that Lou told the kids. And we got a moat full of walkers, absolutely awesome. And now in the flashback, Isabelle takes her sister to the convent. So that's how they ended up in the convent. They knew that the sisters wouldn't turn them away because, they're religious, they want to help people, and they think that they can help, and they do. It turns out that the sister got bit, and she's still pregnant. I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, hey, if she's bit, shouldn't the kid be a zombie? But Walking Dead lore, that's consistent because in the Walking Dead lore, everybody's infected. Everybody, including the baby's already infected. So the fact that she got bit, the bite doesn't actually turn you into a zombie. The bite just kills you faster because the infection of the wound and whatnot. So the baby's not affected by the zombie bite. I think it's consistent with the lore. I don't have an issue with it. I'm good with it. And I think it's a good scene here, a tragic scene. And we have the idea of a miracle birth. It's impossible circumstance. The kid should not have survived because the mother died in childbirth. And even the mother was a zombie and they managed to get the baby out of her. So, it feeds into the whole Messiah thing. Again, I'm not really sure where they're going with that. I don't think that this show is actually going to be supernatural at all. It'd be kind of weird. So for the Walking Dead universe, which is always very grounded, but I think they're going to leave it ambiguous. If the child is actually special like that. But we'll see how that goes. But I do think that having this miracle birth concept, it adds into why they would think that. We have to justify where that's coming from. A miracle is definitely how you get sainthood is documented miracles, and turns out that the child is named after a saint. So Laurent is Isabelle's niece, it turns out. And that I think is a good backstory. But part of me is like, why wouldn't she tell him that I'm your aunt? Why exactly tell that lie? Even if you're going to tell a lie about, the father and all that in the backstory, that understandable. I get where they're coming from. You got to protect the kids. You got to make them feel all right. That makes sense. But I don't know why she would leave out the fact that, they're actually related in some way. Maybe it's to protect him in case she died or something. Maybe we'll get an explanation for that. But here, the mother seems to know that she's going to die or something, or she's giving up. Maybe that's why she dies. She doesn't really want to continue on anymore. So there's some ambiguity there, but she makes Isabelle promise to take care of the child. Which part of me is like, does her sister really know what Isabelle gets up to? 'Cause she's not really a trustworthy person, She's stealing from people, she's doing drugs, she's not responsible. So I have to wonder the sister's wisdom there. But, that maybe she doesn't know. Maybe Isabelle is very guarded and keeps all that stuff a secret. Who knows? So Laurent came out here and found the corpse of the mule, which they told Laurent that the horse or the mule was alive and he was eating apples, and the Laurent says, you lied to me. So that's again the real truth coming out, and you can't really hide the truth forever. It's going to come out anyway. They have to face the world at some point. So it's this question of, is it the right thing to do to lie to protect somebody? And here we got a scene that follows it right away, where Daryl locks Lou in this place to protect her. Daryl is going into the castle on his own, and I think his mindset is, even if I don't come back, if I die in this castle or whatever, she'll be able to get out anyway. So he's not like condemning her to death or anything like that. He just needs to separate himself from her because he doesn't want her dying for this mission, because he knows that he lied to her. So I think it's a noble thing here, and here it's a great scene. I love the setting and just the tension here. It's too still. It's not there's no sounds going on, so you're like, something's going to happen. And then there's this kid down here, one of the children who was lost in the raids is still here. Why did this old guy keep this kid here? It's kind of creepy and weird. I don't know what the mindset is there, but there's something off about that guy, right? So he starts shooting at them from the window, and Daryl gives the kid a gun, teaches him how to shoot it, and then he runs up. Here's a part where I'm like, I don't know if he really should have run out like that. He maybe should have got shot. Seems convenient plot armor, but it's just a little nitpick. Here, Lou is in the building, and then it turns out one of the kids from the school comes here, but they keep it ambiguous of who that is. But part of this scene is like the door's locked. They need to force it open. But I'm like, Daryl locked it from the outside. So would they really need to like yank at it? Wouldn't it be easy to unlock from the outside? I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking there too. But that's definitely a solid cliffhanger. Daryl is now creeping up on the guy with the gun. Turns out the guy is an American as well, and he feels this weird kinship with Daryl just because they're from the same place. And then this guy, he's an antagonist clearly, and he's talking about how he has a wife and kids back home, and even though he's been out here for 10 years, he's still holding on to that hope. So I think that's another sign of the symbol of lying, except he's lying to himself. And Daryl talks about, here we learn apparently Daryl has been all over the country. He's been to the Midwest, he's been to Texas, he's been everywhere. So there must have been a lot of time that has gone by. It feels like, I don't know, maybe it was like 2 years from when the show ended. So the main show, that is. So I don't know. It feels like if he's been all around the country, it's definitely deeper into the apocalypse than we thought. He's just telling the guy there's nothing there. It's the apocalypse everywhere. Everybody you know is most likely dead. Maybe that's not the case. You know, you never know. Some people survive, but most likely, yes. So this guy told a lie to himself, and everything he did supposedly was to get back home, but that seems like another lie. Like, that's a really far-fetched thing to have happen. So we have this tension. Daryl's a good guy, right? So he doesn't want to just shoot the guy and leave him for dead. He's going to let the leader, Lou, decide what to do with him. And of course, you know, we set up the moat. So we're going to have to end up in the moat sometime. And that's what happens here. The horse carriage falls open, some stuff falls out, and Daryl tries to fix it. He puts the gun down. Here's a part where Daryl should know not to put the gun down where the guy can grab it. You know, he is tied up, but he can easily walk over there, and that's exactly what happens. You know, he tells this kid to shoot him if he doesn't do anything. The kid doesn't do it, which makes sense. You know, he's a kid. He doesn't want to actually do acts of violence, I suppose. Although, why would you take him on a raid to begin with if this kid's not willing to actually shoot? So we have a brief struggle here, and then they end up going over the edge. The American guy gets eaten, and, you know, he's screaming out, "I'm an American," which is kind of funny. And I really like the crates, you know, being explosive. Daryl shoots it. We get a cool little explosion. We get an exciting scene here with zombies. We had a zombie kind of creep up on Daryl in this part, which I suppose with all the confusion with the explosion, with the tinnitus going on, ringing in his ears, he wouldn't have heard the zombie. This is one part where we have creeper zombies in The Walking Dead all the time, when zombies in reality would be very loud and obnoxious and you would hear them coming. And that's a plot point in a lot of the show as well. So it's contradiction, but in this scene it actually makes sense. So I just want to point out that they made it make sense in this scene. And then Daryl gets saved by Lou and the kids, and it turns out, you know, Daryl needed them. So he told himself a lie while he was telling them a lie. He was telling himself a lie by convincing himself that he's better on his own, when we know based on the original show and all of that it's not the case. Daryl needs other people as much as he wants to be a lone wolf sometimes. So I thought that was really nice as well. Here we get the kid who lost his brother. We see the zombie in the moat. So that's a tragic scene there. And then we're back at the school, and we're saying goodbye. And Daryl here admits to Lou that he was lying about the medicine. And the old teacher ends up dying in this scene. And I like that Daryl copped to it. You know, he confessed his sin there. So, you know, Daryl, he's a hero. He's a good guy in the show. So I like the character actually, you know, not being able to keep up the lie forever. It does feel like Lou should be a little bit more upset about that, but maybe just because it's the end of the episode, we need to move the story on. But also the tragedy of the woman dying might put things into perspective. So we got a little bit of a funeral scene here, and Laurent, you know, says he can relate because, you know, his teacher died as well as his mother and a lot of other people. So that it's a nice goodbye scene. Laurent is not happy with the adults at this point. He wants to stay with the kids. He doesn't understand, which makes sense. I mean, it seems like this would be a good place for them to stay. So Laurent doesn't understand the mission that he's on. And in that case, it would be better to tell the truth about why Laurent needs to go where he's going, but they don't feel that they have time for that right now. So again, the lies we're telling, and eventually it's going to end up biting them in the butt somehow. So here we got the end of the tragic birth scene, and then that's a really great scene as well. And then the cliffhanger for the episode is Cadron. I think I was pronouncing it wrong before. He is in the nunnery, and he finds the map that leads them to the Paris. So he knows where they're going. He's going to be able to find them. That makes sense. It almost feels like they should have destroyed some of that stuff before they left. They should have maybe seen that coming. So that's another character decision that's like, oops, maybe we should have known better. Here's the statue of Saint Laurent, which I'm not familiar with Saint Laurent, so I don't know the backstory there. Maybe there's some symbolism with that. And also there's a child here. This is Sylvie, I believe, the other nun who is still alive. So I did not realize that she was a kid, but I guess it's over a decade now, so it makes sense. And yeah, we get that cliffhanger at the end, and that's the episode. So really strong episode. I felt really good about it. Little nitpicks here and there, but overall, I think it's a solid 8 out of 10. Maybe if you're really enthusiastic about the character of Daryl and you love it, you'll like it like a 9 out of 10. I'm a Walking Dead super fan, so it felt like a 9 out of 10 to me that we get something that's actually quality. But if I put my objective critic hat on, I would say it's a solid 8 out of 10. I think it's a great episode. Really looking forward to the rest of the season. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section. And with that, it's been your boy Shuggy. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.